Hi guys, Paul from Stables Coffee Co here. I'm here today to try and help you get the best out of your coffee machines or equipment at home. We've been working in this industry for a very long time, and some of the challenges that we found is that every time a customer comes into the business, they pick up a bag of coffee, whether it's our coffee or any coffee at home, and they say it didn't taste very good. There's a problem with your coffee. And that's where we come in, because the challenge is that it's not a problem with the coffee. It's usually a problem with how you're preparing your coffee at home. And there's a few tips that we're going to teach you today how to get the best out of that. So if you haven't already, we have a podcast and this episode is all going to be about training you at home how to get the best out of your coffee. So if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, I highly recommend it. It's a really good thing for you to get some educational stuff, not just about how to make coffee at home, but also a bit about the business, about where we came from and some sort of journeys that we've had along the way. So this episode is going to be talking about espresso machines at home. So today, as I mentioned earlier, is that I brought in my home Sage Duo Temp espresso machine, just so that you at home can sort of relate a little bit more to a commercial machine. I didn't bring my grinder, but that's okay. And we'll talk to you about grind sizes a little bit later and how we can manipulate your grind size to get the best out of it so your espresso is tasting really lovely. So with espresso, what we're trying to do when we extract espresso, we're trying to make it a balanced espresso shot. So at certain stages of when we extract espresso, we have notes of acidity, we have notes of bitterness, we have sweetness, and we have a little bit of body where it makes it nice and thick. And we're trying to bring all of them together so that they create one lovely tasting espresso. And there's a few variables at home. And this is what I was saying earlier, is that if we don't get this right and we don't prepare this right, when we put it into our handle and start pouring the handle, it could go completely one way or the other. And that's where we need to come in at home to adjust the grind size or the dose, which we'll talk about in a minute, to get the best out of it. So for our house blends of coffee, we would recommend that you start as a starting point with about 18 grams of coffee in your basket. With that 18 grams, what we're trying to do is get an extraction time of about 26 to 30 seconds. And again, that's subjective. If you have it run a little bit shorter and it runs at 22 seconds, that's okay. It just means it's going to be a little bit more acidic. And if you like that in your coffee, great, then you can have it at 22 seconds. Versus the other way, if it starts going to a little bit too long, it's at 35 seconds. Again, it's okay. It might be a little bit more bitter, but you might like that. So those are the adjustments that you can do at home with your grinder to manipulate your coffee to taste the way you like it to taste. Now, with that in mind, what we're also aiming for is we're aiming for a 2-to-1 ratio with our coffee. So if we put 18 grams in the basket, we're looking at 36 grams of liquid coffee out. And you can weigh that. So you can put that in a cup, you can weigh it, see what it comes out. And again, depending on what comes out is how you might want to manipulate your grinder as well, which we'll touch on in a minute. Okay, so what I'm now going to talk about, I'm going to talk about the grinder. Now, I don't have a grinder here, but that's okay. So we're talking about earlier, we have 18 grams of coffee that goes into our basket. Now, that's ground coffee, bear in mind. So if we've got 18 grams of coffee in our basket, we've tamped it, we put it in the machine, we've run it, and it hasn't run between the 26 and 30 seconds. And let's say it's run for 40 seconds. What that's telling us is that coffee that's in that basket is currently too fine. So the water is struggling to come through. It's just taken a very long time for it to essentially come out. What's going to happen there with your coffee is it's likely going to taste slightly bitter. Okay, it's going to be a bit too bitter. So our adjustments to fix that is to make your grind a little bit coarser. Still keep 18 grams, just make it a little bit coarser. So all we're doing is just changing the grind setting. We're not changing the dose. That is another variable, and we'll come back to it later. But at the moment, we're just changing the grinder. Okay, so we're just going to make it a little bit coarser, and it should then bring it back in within that range. One thing to note, when you do make an adjustment on your grinder, you probably need to purge and get rid of that little bit of coffee first for it to then start to catch up and pick up the right grind size. So the one thing I also want to mention is that at home, we've got, a certain amount of coffee. You don't really want to waste loads of it. So we're making these adjustments as we go. But what I'm trying to say to you is that you don't have to be so picky and fussy at home. So if you have made an espresso shot and it has run for 40 seconds, you could drink it. If you want to drink it, you can try it. Okay, and if it's okay, fine. Where I'm going with that is you don't want to be wasting loads of coffee. You don't want to be, it's a little bit off, I've got to make an adjustment. And then before you know it, you're down to half a bag and that's all you've got left. So, appreciate your coffee, make your adjustments, remember it for the next day. But the one thing to highlight, do bear in mind the next day, it could be very different again because the temperature in the room can massively affect that. So it might not be the same grind setting from one day to the next. If it's 30 degrees in the morning versus 16 degrees the next day, typical English weather, that can happen. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we're going to take you through the whole making a coffee on your espresso machine at home. So a couple of things that I want to give you as some tips at home is that with most home coffee machines, they have a preheating of the handle that you can set up. Now, if you're in a rush in the morning, what's really important is you want to get this nice and warm, because if you pour a coffee at home and this is already cold, what's going to happen is it's going to absorb a lot of the heat that's coming out of the machine first of all. And then what happens is that when it extracts, it's going to generally be an under extracted shot because that was already too cold. And then with an under extraction, as I said earlier, you'll get quite an acidic, slightly sour tasting coffee. So bear that in mind. If you want a nice balanced espresso and you want consistency, definitely get this nice and warm. All right. Or give it some time just to heat up. So what we're going to do, we're going to take you through the whole process now. As I said earlier, we've got pre-ground coffee, but again, that's okay. Because sometimes at home you might use pre-ground coffee, although I do recommend definitely get a grinder, because with a grinder, you're going to grind it there nice and fresh, a bit like herbs and spices. If you grind it nice and fresh, it's going to taste so much better. Any pre-ground coffee will lose flavor very, very quickly. So bear that in mind, okay? So if we did have a grinder, it's the same sort of thing. We're going to take the handle out. We're going to make sure that handle is nice and clean as well, so and nice and dry. So I've got my dry cloth that I keep on me all the time. I'm going to dry that handle off. And then we're going to put it onto a set of scales, and we're going to weigh out 18 grams, as we mentioned earlier. So I've got my pre-ground coffee here. I'm going to weigh out 18 grams. Now, these home machines sometimes have different size baskets. So you also need to check what size basket your machine can handle. But this one, this Sage Duo Temp, will take 18 grams. It's a little bit full, but that's okay. We'll compress it down in a minute. So there we go. We've got 18 grams. I'm going to take that off. And then what's really important is that we distribute this coffee so it's not one big heap. We sort of balance it over. It's nice and even and distributed as best as we can with our fingers. You can use distribution tools. You can buy them at home. They are brilliant. I have one here on the other machine, but not for this one. So I'm using my hand for now. And then we're going to put our handle just on the side. You've got two spouts here on some home espresso machines. It's really important to not put those spouts down and then apply pressure tamping, because they can bend off or break, not snap, but they can come off and then you have to put them back on. It's a bit of a pain. So there's a little bit here on the back of it. I'm just going to pop that down there. It's going to be nice and level. And then I've got my tamp. And then with my tamp, you want to make sure, again, that's dry, because if that's wet and you put it down, it will affect distribution. So it is nice and dry. I can run it on my cloth if I want to. I'm then going to apply some even downward pressure. I use my fingers if I want to, just to check that it's even, and I'm going to press down firmly. Once I've applied a fair bit of pressure down, I'm just going to release, and I'm going to twist, take it off, and then I'm going to bless off the coffee. And you've got a nice level distribution here of coffee. If your tamp isn't level and it's a bit uneven, what's going to happen is water will find the quickest way out. So it's going to go at the downward part first. So you want to try and keep it nice and even so you get all of that coffee coming through your espresso shot. From there, one other tip, and I see this happen a lot, even at shop level, is I hear baristas putting this in quite aggressively and hitting the top of the machine. What will happen if you hit it? You will crack your coffee. It will look like an earthquake crack. And with that earthquake crack, water's just going to go straight through it, and you're not going to get a nice balanced extraction. So there we go. We're going to pop it in. Have your timer ready. So I've got my little stopwatch here. I'm going to put my cup on the scale so that we can look at the yield at the end. So as we said earlier, we've got 18 grams in. We're looking at 36 grams out within a 26 to 30 second time. So there we go. I'm going to tear the cup. That's at 0. I'm going to pop that under. And I'm going to turn my espresso machine on. As I turn it on, I'm going to start my timer, and we're going to see what we have within 26 to 30 seconds. Now, I've been doing this for quite a long time, so I can sort of see what an espresso shot's going to look like roughly around 36. What you can also do is you can get small scales that can go under here, and you can also weigh out your yield as you go with time. Okay, so I'll stop that, and that was at 29 seconds. It looks great already. I'm going to pop it on the scale, and we got 37 grams. You're not going to really worry too much about 1 gram of coffee there. Okay, so it's on point, which is great, and that was really good because I didn't really overly set this up too much today. I was actually hoping it was going to go maybe one way or the other, because if it did go one way or the other, what I could do is give you those slight little tips to go, okay, this is what's going on with the coffee. But I'll give you an example. So let's just say, for example, there, that runs still for 29 seconds, and the yield of the coffee was at, say, 20 grams. Okay, so it's very short, but it's run for 29 seconds. What that's telling me is your grind is currently too fine. All right, so it's just struggling to come out and give you that liquid within that amount of time. So one of your things you're going to do with your grinder, you're going to make it a little bit coarser. You're going to get rid of a couple. If you want to get rid of a couple, you might want to drink them, or you might have someone that you don't like in the household. You just say, hey, drink this, and use it, and then make your adjustments, and you should start seeing those changes. And that's it for today on Espresso. I hope you enjoyed it.